Three. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of In the Umpire's Clubhouse. I'm your host, Bob Busser. Guys, Dale, introduce yourself.
Oh, was that my cue?
Yes.
This went really smooth in dress. Yeah, I'm Dale Scott, and yeah, you probably heard of me. You probably yelled at me at some point in your lifetime, and so happy to be here.
Hello there, I'm Jim Joyce, and I'm sure my introduction is enough. So we'll go from there.
Come on, Jimmy, you're a great guy.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're one of my faves. You and Dale, you make this job so much fun. I got to tell you, it's a blast to do these. Today, we've got a really special guest. I've known Paul Olden for a few years now, and he has had quite the career. I'm going to read a laundry list of teams he's worked for. He's been the play-by-play announcer for the Yankees, Rays, Angels, Indians, Philadelphia Eagles, UCLA Bruins, Los Angeles Rams, Jets, Nets, and ESPN. And he was also, I'm going to have to bring it up, Paul, because they're going to want to know. He was part of the infamous Dave Kingman tirade by Lasorda in '78 when Paul was at KLAC. It was F-bomb-orama, and Paul handled like a true pro, because Tommy could be Tommy. Anyway, that being said, Paul is now the PA announcer at Yankee Stadium. He basically took over for the legend Bob Shepard, and he's doing a hell of a job. He didn't miss a beat with Bob. Bob was unique. That being said, Paul, welcome to the program.
Thank you. You read that just as I wrote it, and I appreciate
that. We need our cues here, Paul. I mean, So, Paul, the teams you have played for, and you've done Super Bowls too, PA announcer for Super Bowls.
Yeah,
it's like you should have your own Hall of Fame.
Well, I've been around since I was 21, and I'm 70 now, so that's going to cover a lot of time and places. And most of the jobs were kind of stepping stones from one improved the other and all that. So 16 years now with the Yankees doing the public address, and no end in sight. Although I'm not going to do 57 years like Bob Shepard, my predecessor, was able to do. Bob worked until he was 96.
We don't want to have to prop you up at what 123 years old to do PA. So
Oh no, I'll be long gone by then, in both senses of the word.
I got to tell you, Paul, as a former radio disc jockey, you've got the golden voice. I mean, I marvel at it. Did you ever have the opportunity to meet? And I can't remember his name, but he was the Oakland A's, the voice of God, they called him.
Bill King.
Oh, Bob Steele.
Bob Steele.
Oh, yeah, Bob Steele. Yes.
Yeah. He was one of my mentors in a way, and thankfully had a chance to let him know that, and his family as he progressed with his illnesses in his latter years before he passed last year. But no, Bob was one of my great influences. I just loved his style and his kind of breezy, deep voice. He used to be, I think he was a Pentecostal minister. And so he was used to projecting his voice. But he spoke, and when he spoke, the voice boomed out, but it was such an easy, it didn't seem strained at all. And so him and John Ramsey, who was the Dodgers PA announcer for many years, everybody's PA announcer in LA, was the Rams, the Kings, the Lakers, UCLA, USC, when they both played in the same stadium. So those were two guys that influenced my style.
Well, I just remember when I first came up and working in Oakland, the first time I heard his booming voice there in the Coliseum, I thought, yeah, that is just a classic. I mean, great radio, great, PA voice. And I really enjoyed that. But you also have quite the voice. And as us old disc jockeys, we notice those things.
Well, when I was coming up, I wanted to be either a disc jockey or a horn player in the Chicago band. Even though I never played, I played percussion and piano, never touched a horn. but I thought being a horn player for Chicago was so cool. That was my choice, either a disc jockey. That was before I was really interested in sports announcing. But yeah, voices. You hear different voices around baseball now, and you can immediately identify the stadium or the team
Right.
by the voice. And I also grew up listening to Vin Scully and Dick M. Berg and Chick Hearn in Los Angeles, and was heavily influenced by their style, especially Vin Scully's voice, to the point where when I was in my rookie year at Cleveland doing the first year play-by-play with Herb Score, the Cleveland Plain Dealer had a headline saying, "Despite his sculliness, Olden is okay." They were,
His
they were,
sculliness.
yeah, because my style was like Vin Scully's. When
Right.
you don't, when I was 15, you don't know what to do, so you copy the announcers you hear growing up where you are.
Right.
There's one announcer we haven't talked about, and that was Schoenfeller in Boston. Again, a
Yeah,
guy you heard his voice, you knew who he was, you knew where you were, or Bob
Very
Casey in
unique.
Minneapolis. The
yeah.
same thing, you knew it. Today's announcers, I don't want to step on any toes, but it's like a scream and yell fest when they're introducing somebody.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah,
I
Rex Barney. Rex Barney was another one of the classic
right.
PA
Rex
guys
Barney.
in
Yeah.
Baltimore.
Give that fat a contract.
Yeah, yeah, I still say that, and I do that in spring training. I don't do it here in New York. That would be kind of going outside the quote unquote Bob Shepard box of what I'm allowed to do. But
Right.
in spring training, it's much more relaxed, and I still do that. Give that fan a contract.
Did you ever have the pleasure of meeting Paul Strozen from El Paso?
No, no.
He was a classic. Just the same type of voice quality, and just like your liquid gold. It's just amazing. When I hear your voice, I know immediately. But I've
Yeah,
known you for 112 years. So, as a matter of fact, Paul probably was the first quote unquote media person that ever interviewed me in the capacity of being an umpire, and that was in the Pacific Coast League
yeah.
when I first started. And so
In
Paul and I
Spokane.
go back that far. So
Yeah, when I was with Spokane, I started in
exactly,
1980.
exactly right.
It goes
And
back
Well,
that far. They had
ironically,
radio back then, Jimmy.
See what I mean?
it was transistors.
well, next month I've been invited to go back to Spokane to throw out a first pitch as the Spokane club is now a Class A affiliation with the Rockies, but they
Right.
do such a great job on social media, and they cover the team history online every day with players and broadcasters who had come through Spokane, and they recognize them and write about them. And so they invited me back to throw out a first pitch, and apparently they want me to do a couple of innings of PA work there in Spokane next month. So that'll be fun.
And Paul and I usually hooked up every time when I moved and when he moved. We always found each other, and that was really cool because we're really old baseball friends, and
Yeah.
we never lost that relationship. Um, and I want to thank you for that because being an umpire and doing what we do, you're usually remembered for the bad things, not the good things.
Yeah.
And so you
Yeah.
were always on that other side that was you took a person for what a person was. And I want to thank you for that. That
Oh,
was
you're welcome. No, I always had an affinity for the umpires to the point where the first 5-10 years with the Yankees, I always had the phone number to the umpire's room before the game, so I could call down there and say,
absolutely.
how do you pronounce your name? What's going on,
I
and all
was
that
gonna
sort
I
of
was
thing.
gonna ask you about that. There's some interesting. I mean, I worked with Dan Isonia for all these years.
Oh yeah,
And everybody. I've heard variations of his name certain
yeah,
times. But I, even
Cheetah.
when I've done just some podcasts and stuff since I retired, um, you know, you you're reading something, you're doing something, and you come up with a name, and if you haven't, like you said, called down and gotten the correct pronunciation, and you're
yeah.
struggling with it in real time, it's like you don't want to embarrass yourself, and you certainly don't want to embarrass them.
Oh, we always at Yankee Stadium introduce the four umpires before each game over the PA system. So quite often we try to time it when they're just coming out of the dugout, and
Right.
we can get them on camera. That often doesn't happen. for timing purposes, but we still put a graphic up on the board and I say the 4 names. So, and now Major League Baseball has put out a comprehensive pronunciation guide for the umpires and players. Although one of the umpires' names in the guide is pronunciation is incorrect.
Go figure.
And I know it because I talked to him and I said, "This is wrong, isn't it?" He said, "Yeah, that's wrong."
Well, you know, for years I thought my first name was Frickin because I'd walk on the field and they'd say Frickin Scott, you know. So
He's cleaning it up, everybody. Hey, Paul, you need to ask Dale. Dale can give you pointers on throwing the first pitch.
I give you pointers how not to throw him.
Yeah,
you got to get a little bit of air under them because they
listen, Paul, there's a reason for 32 plus years I handed it to the catcher after foul balls. So there's a reason for that, and you can. It's very obvious when you see me throw a first pitch.
You never threw a ball back to a pitcher?
Oh, I did a couple times. Well, I'll tell you. I mean, yes,
If
I
that's
did.
what you
But I
want to
also
call
threw
it.
the ball. I also skipped it a few times. I also threw it to center field. Like when I was in Double-A, Dick Nelson was our supervisor. Great guy. He just passed away last year. But he said after a game one time, he goes, "You might want to think about giving it to the catcher." And
I got a quick question because I don't know if Dale feels the same way, but I know that when we were in the minor leagues, the camaraderie in the minor leagues was second to none, actually. At least in our era, Dale and my era. And as we got up and got to the major leagues, that camaraderie kind of go. First of all, you're getting into a group of older umpires and stuff like that when you first come up and stuff, and they do take you under their wing to a certain degree. But the camaraderie was a little bit different than it was in the minor leagues. The minor leagues was really all for one, one for all. And is it the same thing with you, even though that you're basically the talent? Is it this kind of like the same thing for you as when you were in the minor leagues, and then as you progressed to the major leagues? Was it? Did you feel the same type of camaraderie? Kind of, I have to find a new sense of camaraderie.
Well, it's tougher now because it's so widespread in terms of the cities. You know, when we were in the Pacific Coast League, for instance, there were only so many bars in Albuquerque and Tacoma and Tucson that we all hung out in after the games, and I think that promoted camaraderie, a kind of sense of oneness too, because the umpires. Obviously, you want to have that kind of division between the players and the umpires, but after the game, we're in the same bar. We're at the same hotel, so you're going to run into guys, and most of the feelings of the negativity from a game kind of spill over and are or not spill over, but are subdued if we're in a bar having a beer together and talking over what happened in the game. So I think now that's almost impossible because the players stay in one hotel, the umpires stay in a different hotel. And you just don't have that kind of togetherness, which is understandable. But the minor leagues fostered that because of the smallness of the cities and especially back in the 80s, the relatively few places to go after a game.
Right, that is true, absolutely, and some of them are still my favorite places that I've ever been to. So it was. You're exactly right. I can remember going back to maybe like in Tacoma. Tacoma was a one bar town, and at least for us. And but you know what? It was fun though. Still, I still think the minor leagues.
Was that in Tacoma? Was that the My Place up the street from the airport?
No, actually, the place that we went was we were down the street from our hotel called the Doric Hotel. And it was called the Terry Tavern.
Oh yeah,
the Terry Tavern. And,
yes. I think we had a celebration there after winning a division in the PCL in 1980. I can remember getting dunked into a trash can there.
Like I said, nothing but fun.
All in good fun. Yes, all in good fun.
Well,
Paul, did
And
you?
of course, the best place was we also had Hawaii in the
oh,
Pacific Coast League, and that was 8 days over in Hawaii every season.
well, that
So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was dangerous also.
Yeah. Well, you ran out of money. We were, I think our per diem was only $15 a day back then. So you ran out of your per diem probably by the third or fourth day.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden they decided to put Las Vegas in the league also in
Oh yeah,
1985, I believe it was 85 or 86, I believe. And
yeah,
you talk
yeah.
about per diem running short.
Well, that's where Spokane moved to
Right.
Las Vegas.
Exactly. Larry
Thanks to
Kentob, right?
thanks to Mount St. Helens blowing up in 1980 and pretty much
Yeah.
wiping out our second half
Yep.
schedule. So we lost a lot of money. And he got a sweetheart offer from Las Vegas a couple of years later, as he was still trying to recover from the 1980 debacle with Mount St. Helens.
Right.
And Las Vegas, of course, at that time in the early 80s was already had ideas about becoming a big professional sports town,
Absolutely.
and getting the Stars to move there was I think the first brick in the wall to what we see in Las Vegas now.
I agree 100% with that. And still one of my very good friends, Don Logan, is still there.
Oh yeah,
And,
yes,
and Don was one of the best. And
yeah.
but you're exactly right. I'm out in that neighborhood now. This is my stomping ground is Beaverton, Oregon. So Dale is also a Portland guy. So
Uh,
we know
Yeah.
about the soot from Mount St. Helens. So
oh yeah.
So
Yeah, that was-
it's funny
that
you
was
bring up
something.
per diem and spending your because you didn't make very much. I remember in the Cal League, I worked with Tim Cheetah, and we would go to Reno. And a lot of times you go to Reno for like 6 days or a week or something. And Cheetah had worked in the league the year before, so he said, "All right, first thing we do at our hotel is we pay for the week because." Because
Yeah.
you can always eat in Reno free just by, or really cheap by going to different places, but you need a place to stay, right? So,
Yeah.
so we would pay that off, and then we would have our, what little money we had left for gambling or whatever. But one night, the last night we were there for a week, and a friend of mine from Eugene had come down, and it was about 2 a.m, having steak and eggs for 49 cents or whatever it was, and and it's, by the way, a very good cut of meat. But I was playing Keno, and I hit like $800, which
Wow.
in the California League for a California League umpire in 1982 seemed like $8,000, or it was just. And I picked up breakfast, because because I'm not cheap. With tip, it was like $250, and then it was a perfect timing to win. Literally hours before we were going to be taken off, and I thought I was rich for about a day and a half. So those stories, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Jimmy, you and I had some Vegas stories that we really can't talk about, but
Absolutely.
They usually
stay in Vegas.
They usually tell me these stories when we're not recording, and I'm just laughing the whole time. I'm like, oh my God.
Dale and I actually held a concert. Dale and I actually held a concert in the little Caesar's Palace parking lot well, I won't say what time it was, but
well,
the valet made the bad decision of leaving his station, but leaving the microphone wide open, and we did a little harmony in the Caesar's Palace.
Is this thing on? Will somebody get our car, please?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Paul, now you see why I came up with this format. This is gold, because people,
Yeah.
like talking to you, people don't, they know who you are, but they don't have the behind the scenes. And the same with Dale and Jimmy. And we're bringing Buck and Bob Davidson on, and Tim Cheetah and a few others. And it's for the stories, because the public can't hear the stories that go on, and they're hilarious stories. Some we can't repeat. Right. As Dale has said, this is not for broadcast, but it gives people an insight that these guys are human beings, and they're actually pretty nice guys.
Well, some of those, we could have a channel of just those stories. It'd be pay-per-view. You'd have to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I never thought of that, Dale. That's a good idea.
Paul, I was going to ask you. You've been with the Yankees since 2009. Is that correct?
Yeah. First year of the new stadium.
And where were you before that?
Oh, I was out in L.A. I had done Tampa Bay Rays play-by-play for the first 7 years of that franchise, and then my contract ran out, and we couldn't agree on a extension. So I sold my house in Florida at the height of the real estate craziness. So I made a bunch of money and moved back to LA, where I grew up, and just took some time off. Did fill-in sports work on an all-news station on the weekends, and went back to college and studied photojournalism and wrote for the school newspaper. And I'm in my mid-50s. I was the oldest one in the class. But I had a blast, still keep in touch with a lot of the students that were on our staff through Facebook, and just had a great time. And then in early 2009, the Yankees called out of the blue and asked if I was interested in returning to the team to do public address at the new stadium. And so that's how I wound up back with the Yankees.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is if, how did that opportunity with the Yankees come up, and did you have a tryout? But obviously they knew exactly who you were.
Well, I did. They didn't tell me I was their number one choice. They made me kind of feel like I was auditioning. And so
Right.
they sent a script, and I rehearsed it, and then they flew me back to New York. And on the first day of spring, I think it was March 20th, 2009, I'm at the empty Yankee Stadium because it's still under construction, putting the finishing touches being put on it. And it started to snow a little bit that day. And I'm in the stadium reading the prepared script they sent me, and various executives and Yankee personnel are interspersed throughout the stadium to hear how I sound. And there was one point in the script where I say, and ladies and gentlemen, look to the skies as the U.S. Army Golden Knights parachute team is jumping into Yankee Stadium. And the construction workers stopped what they were doing, and they're looking up. Of course, there's no parachute team coming in, but I guess I sounded so convincing that they said, okay, this is our guy. If he can make it fool construction workers, he can be our PA guy.
And you worked Super Bowls.
Yeah,
12 Super Bowls consecutively.
Wow. Yes.
And how did that come about?
I was doing play-by-play for the Jets, and our media relations director, Frank Ramos, came up to me and said, I just came from the NFL office, and they said they want to use one PA announcer every year for the Super Bowl. Are you interested? And I said, yeah. And that was it.
That was it.
Now, let me ask you this, Paul. Obviously, you've always had a love of sports and such.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a particular team, baseball wise, where that was your team?
Well,
growing up in LA would have been the Dodgers or the A's, Angels?
Dodgers, Rams, Angels, anything local in LA, UCLA, USC. I was a big USC fan because I lived near the campus. But the ironic thing is, I wound up broadcasting for UCLA.
There you go.
I wanted to be the USC announcer, but they didn't have any openings. But UCLA did, and so I wound up doing their games. But I did the PA for Rod Dado at USC when he was the longtime baseball coach there. And that was when I was 18, 19, 20 years old when I was doing that.
Yeah.
So did you look at the announcers kind of like fans look at players? It like, you've already talked about your love of Vin Scully. Was it like that you could basically name the announcers at most of the teams that were out there?
Oh yeah. I followed a sport magazine had a monthly quiz where they had various announcers from other teams ask questions of fans, and then you sent in the answer, maybe won a subscription the next month or something like that. So it was difficult to try to find out who the announcers were because there was no internet. This is back in the late 60s and early 70s. So you got out of town newspapers. We had big newsstands that actually sold the out of town newspapers that arrived 2 or 3 days later. And so you could kind of read up on who was where. So it was fun to follow. And at that time in LA, I guess across the country, before deregulation, every radio station had to have a news department and a sports department. So there was always a sports show of 10 to 15 minutes on every station every night with their local guy. And so you learned how to do sports reports and you learned how to do play-by-play from listening to the games. So it was a great incubator for young announcers in Los Angeles at that time because there was such a variety of styles and voices.
Yeah,
Did
I'm
you,
actually old enough to remember that. So,
Paul, did you ever do anything in radio besides sports? I mean, were you a disc jockey, like music or that kind of stuff?
No, I was a newscaster at KLAC. I never did do sports. I helped Jim Healy, the sportscaster, with his shows every night. But my main job was preparing the newscast, doing interviews of newsmakers, and then on the weekends I anchored the news. I got a chance to be the news anchor on the weekends. I was on the air when the People's Temple Jim Jones
Right.
thing
Right.
in Guyana happened. It
1978.
that night. I was a news assistant with the Symbionese Liberation Army, had taken over with Patty Hearst. So there
Right.
were quite a number of cataclysmic events that I was involved in as a newscaster, not sportscaster.
Well,
And
I was a
they
disc jockey.
reiterated to me that you're here to do news, not sports.
I was a disc jockey. I started a station in Eugene, KBD. I have a top 40 station. I was started when I was 16. I worked there about 5 years. I was working the Sunday morning that Mount St. Helens blew.
Oh yeah,
And we didn't have a news department we barely had one anyway, but we didn't have one on Sundays on the weekends. But I heard the teletype, the bells going off, so I know something's up, right? So I went out there. But we used to, when I first was going there, I would read like 5 minutes of news headlines and stuff. And when I would come across some foreign leader that some name with a lot of vowels. I would act like the radio we're having technical names. So the premier Sabu, it was said he would have to go to.
that's a good idea.
because I would rather do that than try to pronounce this guy's name.
Well, it's funny, Paul. You mentioned Jim Healy, and the Kingman tape, that was gold to him. He played that almost every night. And he was a great guy to work for, I'm sure, because he had a sense of humor. How was your time with Healy?
Oh, it was excellent. Excellent. We had a great relationship. Jim came up in the Northwest in the Spokane area and had a vacation home in Coeur d'Alene where I visited him a couple of times. So we had a great relationship, and it was fun just to come up with new sound bites for him to use on his sports show. And he trusted my judgment. He said, if he got a tape for me, and I said, this is golden. You got to use this. He didn't really question my judgment, and usually I was right.
Well, the thing is, Lasorda in LA during his heyday, he was an announcer's gold, especially if you wanted the sound bites where he's using every F-bomb you can think of, like for Bavacqua and LaFay and all that. I mean, it was, you heard it 100 times on when he was on KLAC, but it was funny. You just had to laugh because it kind of broke up your day when you're on your drive home in that lovely LA traffic that we all know about.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you didn't hear that sort of thing every day, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the World Series audio with him taking Doug Rauch out of the World Series game, and they are arguing with one another on the mound. And Davey Lopes breaks it up, say, "Hey, I don't care. I'm not taking sides here, but take that into the locker room. You shouldn't be arguing out here
right
in front of all these people." And so yeah, those are the old days. You don't.
oh yeah,
You
exactly.
can't. You're not allowed to be that kind of unhinged these days because everything is covered.
Yeah,
Everything
now we're talking to now we're talking to the center fielder during the game
Yeah,
while the pitch is being thrown.
during
So
games. Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
I
that-
got burned early in my career. I wasn't mic'd, nobody was mic'd, but they could read my lips. Our supervisor at the time, Dick Butler, was telling me that. So very early in my career, when you see me in arguments, a lot of times I'm just like this,
Yeah.
just so you can't read what I'm saying, you know?
Yeah. Well, Earl Weaver didn't subscribe to that.
No,
not at all.
no. And that famous clip with Bill Haller,
Yeah.
which is a classic, and
Yeah.
and the a lot of funny things about that clip and that video. And Bill Haller was mic'd up for some show. They're doing some news thing for him, but so that's why it was mic'd up. But if you watch that video, this is 3 minutes into the game. This was the top of the first. The first hitter got a base hit. Then Haller called a balk, and that's when
Right.
that's when you had the whole thing go on.
That's
Yeah.
between Dale and Jim, I did an interview first with Jim about 3 months ago, and these guys were just going back and forth with the stories. And that Haller thing is legendary. You can find it on YouTube. You can find any of Lasorda's stuff on YouTube. But it's a different animal nowadays. They don't. I don't think they have the character managers that they used to, like Lou Piniella, right, Tommy?
Exactly.
That's for Dale.
No, that's true though,
inside
because
joke.
look at the GMs and even managers now. They're Harvard whiz kids doing
Yeah.
analytics. Analytics are you don't not that we enjoyed all the time being on the field and getting chewed out by a Weaver or Billy Martin or something, but there is something to say about there were some personalities in the game where now you just don't see that. And on the umpire side, ever since 2000 when they combined the leagues and we had a whole fresh new management in the commissioner's office and everything, they have absolutely toned umpires down, not only in arguments, they don't want you to be aggressive and this and that and this and that, but also just if you see mechanically, most guys are very basic and they don't want any any style really. I think it's a little bit of a shame. I understand you can go too far and like the Luciano or something where it's just maybe quite a show, but I do think, and I think it's good for the game to have a little personality in the umpires. I mean, Jimmy could tell you, I'm sure you guys do. If you're channel surfing, you come up on a game. I used to be able to name that plate umpire sometimes even before a pitch, but certainly by the way he set up or called strikes or whatever. Now I have a real tough time. There's only a few guys I can name right off on the spot, and those guys are basically veteran guys now. So the whole way that baseball entertained as far as that goes has changed a lot. And of course replay also. Replay has made arguments a totally different thing.
And now we know the game by game grading of an umpire is I guess there are a couple of websites that do that.
Right.
I know each game that the Yankees show on TV, right in the first inning, they put the umpire's picture up and they put a graphic up. Is he pitcher friendly? Is he hitter friendly? Is he neutral? So right away you have an opinion about what to expect from this particular umpire based on the statistics that have been compiled from game to game now.
Yeah, and they did that in Vegas for years. They would say who the plate umpire was. The home team has a X record when he's the home plate umpire, or there's an average of X amount of walks when he's a home plate umpire or strike. I mean, trying to get that edge or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Whether
you need
you're
the
an
edge
over under umpire, that always cracked me up. Whether you were an over under umpire,
Right.
Unbelievable.
Speaking of which, I've got a question. Hunter Wendelstedt this year threw Booney out. And Booney didn't say anything. What happened there? We never saw anything out on the internet or anything. It's just that Hunter tossed Booney and he wasn't the one arguing with somebody else in the dugout.
Well,
no, it was a fan. It was a fan.
Yeah.
Who yelled
Well, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened with Booney was, first of all, in Hunter's defense, Booney's been known to say things. So there's that. But there was some chirping a little bit about a pitch, whatever, and then a fan right behind This was in Oakland, I believe. Was it in Oakland?
No, no, it was at Yankee
Oh,
Stadium.
it was
Yeah.
Yankee Stadium. Okay.
Yeah.
Right behind, I mean, literally right behind the dugout there, this fan yelled something, and of course Hunter didn't see it. He heard it, thought it was, I mean, it was, he assumed it came from Booney, and boom, he was gone. And that was that was one time that Booney was going, no, it wasn't me.
Yeah, yeah, that was memorable because the fan just sat there innocently afterwards and didn't tip off that it was him who said it. He just sat there and watched. But the TV replay clearly showed
Clearly.
him saying something and then the umpire reacting to it.
Well, Paul, I got to tell you though, and Jimmy can attest to this. You get flagged from a dugout, and then when you look over, it's like church mice usually.
Yeah.
You know, and then when you're trying to zero in on who's chirping, just like you said, the fan didn't say, "Oh, it was me," and rarely do you have a player go, "Oh, it was me." A lot of times you have to depend on your base umpire. Hey, tell me who's chirping over there because I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
I was in Anaheim one night, and I'm standing on the third base line. I always had the same habit. After the inning was over, I always stood at on the third base line, and I would just watch the pitcher warm up for the next from the next team or whatever. And all of a sudden, like Hunter, I thought I had heard something come from the Angels bench, and I naturally thought it was Doug Rader because Doug Rader and I did not get along in the minor leagues, and we did not get along in the major leagues. And so I started barking across the field at Doug Rader for yelling at me. And all of a sudden, though, when I looked over, I saw that Doug Rader wasn't even looking at me. But I had assumed it was. And all of a sudden, I felt this presence come up to me from my left, and it was Larry Barnett. And he actually put his arm around me and he says, "You might want to drop this one," because he didn't say a word. And he says, "You're going to be in a boatload of trouble if you continue with this argument." I looked at Larry. Of course, Larry was a hulk of a man. I looked at him. I said, "I got you, Chief." And it is funny, like Dale was saying, that does happen every once in a while where you swear that something came out of that dugout, and it could be major leagues, minor leagues, or whatever. And that's part of the experience though of growing up, and being able to recognize that situation. And it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen, believe me. And I think it's happened to every umpire that's ever walked on the field.
Right.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
There's another thing that people don't know about Paul. He is one hell of a photographer. Speaking to a fellow photographer, Paul, your stuff on Facebook that you post is absolutely stunning. This guy is excellent. His black and white stuff, it's really, really good, Paul. How did you get started with photography? Was it
I
childhood?
just took it. No, really an interest in the mid '90s. Actually, is when I bought one of my first cameras. It was a film camera.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, actually, film is making a somewhat of a comeback, like cassettes these days, and record albums. Yes. So it's on a small scale, though. But no, I got interested in photography then in the mid '90s, and just kind of carried on and continued my interest. And as I said, when I took time off from baseball after the 2004 season, I went back to LA and enrolled in school and became the photo editor of the Valley Star, the award-winning Valley Star newspaper for Valley College, Los Angeles Valley College. And every year in California, there's a junior college journalism competition in Sacramento, where all the junior colleges from around the state come and enter articles and photos and layouts and all that sort of thing for awards. And thank goodness my crew, including me, won several awards for photography and writing, and we took a good deal of pride in that. And that was a nice little break from baseball to do something like that. And I still had a hand. I would go down to Dodger Stadium and Anaheim and and get photo passes and take pictures during the game. It was just something different to do. And luckily, I was in LA when Pete Carroll was coaching USC football, And that was one of the highlights of my life, covering that team as a photographer, because that was one of the great college football teams of all time.
Right.
And so, and of course, we know Pete went on to even greater heights in Seattle. And I had worked with Pete at the beginning of his career as a coach with the New York Jets, when I was doing play-by-play for the Jets in the '90s, and he was the head coach, with not much success at that point. But then to reconnect with him later when he was at the top of the world with USC was a lot of fun.
Did you
no,
go ahead.
real quick, Dale, do you take your camera into the booth with you when you're doing games, or do
I
you
have a small camera with a nice zoom lens, but there's so many wires and screens between where I sit and the field that sometimes I'll get a good picture, but there's a wire running through the head of a player. Uh, but now, thankfully, it's so much easier to remove those things in post production. So
yes.
I'm still looking for the perfect picture, and I get a lot of plays at the plate. I'm pretty good at those, and the plays at second base on stolen base tries, um, and pitchers warming up. I get a lot of good pictures like that.
Well, you had to
So
be
it's
sure if
fun to
Dale
do
or Jimmy was on the field, you had to get their best side, right? Right, guys?
that.
Do we really
Well, we
have a best side?
Well,
Did
I
you,
try to get
Paul?
the ultimate picture is to get the umpire saying on a play of the plate the safe or the out signal. Usually the safe is better because the arms are outstretched and you can see the players looking up, asking safe or out, and the umpire with the hands palms down. And I often crop out the umpire in my pictures, but those times I leave them in.
Well, we
Well,
wanted to
how
talk to you about
dare
that, by the
you,
way,
Paul?
cropping us out. I mean, I'm just saying. When you were
Well,
doing
again,
when you were with SC,
it's not your best time.
did you have a chance to come up and see the beautiful Pacific Northwest? Did you come to Eugene and see Onsen
Oh yeah,
Stadium?
oh yeah, yeah. Well, when I broadcast UCLA, we basketball and football. We were
Right.
I have friends. I still have friends in Eugene. In fact, have you lived there all your life, or
I grew up there, but I've been in Portland since '86.
86, 86? Okay. Well, there was a news anchor who worked in Spokane with me in the early '80s who went on to a long career in Eugene. She's retired now. Shelley Kurtz.
I know the name.
Worked
Yeah, I know what you're talking
worked
about.
at, worked at KVAL.
Yeah.
And so she's still up there. So I still have friends there. But no, I loved coming up to the Northwest, Tacoma and
And you
those places.
you went to Matt Court then, right? The old Matt
Oh
Court for
yeah,
basketball. Yeah. I mean, that was
yeah,
a classic
yeah,
place.
Oh.
yeah.
It was one of
Yeah,
the only arenas that it reminded me, honestly, of the old Boston Garden because you were
yeah,
right on top of the people
Right.
in the balconies, and the
yeah,
noise level was deafening. Like if the Celtics were playing well or the Bruins were playing well, it was loud in the old garden. It's just like
yeah.
Matt.
It was a thrill to go to those places because I grew up watching UCLA and Lou Alcindor in his formative years and watching those games on TV and hearing Dick Enberg describe the small confines of that court and then actually going there and broadcasting myself. So that was fun.
Yeah, we as Duck fans, growing up in Eugene, saw a lot of games there. We hated it when they moved into the new arena, but it was so funny. The Dana Altman, the current coach, but he said, Matt Court is magical on game days, and it sucks the rest of the time because they had no, the locker rooms and meeting rooms. They didn't,
Yeah,
it was just an old facility. But he said on game days it was really cool because just the whole atmosphere.
kind of like Fenway Park.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, the clubhouses are cramped, at least the visitors' clubhouse, and the walkways were narrow. And I do give them credit; they have put a lot of money into making Fenway a little bit more fan friendly.
Right.
But I don't know if they've done much or if they could do much to improve on the visitors' clubhouse, and especially when it rained, that walkway from the
Well,
clubhouse to the field was inundated with water, and they had to put these pallets on the ground so you could walk over them so you wouldn't get your
We know
shoes
them
soaked.
well.
Yeah, yeah,
And now Wrigley was that way too, but what they did is expanded underground, basically. Their clubhouse and everything. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's just absolutely gorgeous now. Where it
Oh,
used to
really?
be,
Okay.
like Fenway, an old, cramped, not a lot of room, not a lot of training, or weight room or any of that. Now they've alleviated all that by expanding it. So it's something that I don't know if they can do that at Fenway, but it was innovative for sure.
Do either of you work the Sammy Sosa corked bat game when the Tampa Bay was playing at Chicago and he got caught with the corked bat?
No,
No, that was that McClellan?
yeah, it might be.
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
I was on the crew when um, what's his name for Cleveland. They checked his bat, so we put it for evidence. We put it in our locker room, and when we came off the game after the game was
Elmer
over,
Bell.
somebody got in our locker room through the roof and
Oh,
stole it and switched it out.
Yeah, Elmer
Yeah.
Bell.
Yeah.
Albert Bell, thank you.
Yeah, he was a prince. No. Yeah, that whole thing, I mean, who thought you weren't going to get caught? Really and truly. Players are not smart sometimes. Oh, we'll just put a fake bat in there. Like the ump haven't looked at the end of the bat that's been, sanded down or anything like that. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
So, Paul, your resume must come in volumes. I mean, as many places as you've been since you've been obviously 16, 15, 16 years old. And the other thing I'm amazed at is your memory. Your memory going back and you can almost see your eyes light up and go back to when you were 16 years old and when you first started and stuff. Your resume is, I'm talking about, impressive as anything I've ever heard of.
Incredible.
And
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
absolutely
I'm from the
incredible.
school that Dick Enberg always impressed upon me, and Vin Scully too, that you work year round in various sports. You just don't do, because I asked when I was 15, I wrote to Dick Enberg, is it okay if I just do baseball? And nothing else the rest of the year. And he says, well, yeah, it is, but you probably kind of get bored. And so I took on football and basketball as well, as they did. But they were always known, and I always liked to
Right.
pride myself. They were always known as baseball guys who
Right.
did the other sports, not the other way around.
Well, Paul, I don't know if have you written a book or are you thinking about writing a
No.
book?
Occasionally the thought crosses my mind, but it's not really something that is at the front of my list of things to do.
It was I did it during COVID. I had nothing else to do, so but your story, like Jimmy said, I think would be fascinating to read.
Absolutely.
And your
Absolutely.
and like you said, your his memory for everything, and that's I just think it would be a hell of a memoir to dive into, and of course you would be doing the voice on the audiobook like I did.
Yeah,
Of course.
you gotta have that.
Exactly.
Well, for a buddy of mine who I went to school with, just celebrated 50 years of friendship. He wrote a book. He was a reporter in LA and covered everything, and so he wrote his book, and I helped him with write it. And man, that was a 2.5, 3 year project.
Yeah, well, I wasn't that long for mine, but the
Well, he had
process
a
of
lot of pictures. He had a lot of pictures in
that
his
helps.
book. So that helps take up a lot of time because you're editing and culling and getting permission to use the pictures.
Right.
That takes a lot of time, as it turns out.
That I can attest to. I only had 25 pictures in my book, and a lot of them were taken by my dad, who he wanted a lot of money, and I said, "Come on, Dad, let's go."
Paul, I know you got to get to Yankee Stadium. You got a game tonight, and I know Dale, you've got to jump on a plane to come back down to Palm Springs. Paul, it was great having you, and we want you back. I mean, this was fun. You guys act like you've known each other forever, but it's great to have somebody on where everybody's on the same page, and your golden pipes resonate through Yankee Stadium. Even though I'm a Red Sox fan, and you know that. I always look up. That's Paul. I know him. He's a good guy. So, Paul, thank you for coming on. Next time you're in Yankee Stadium and you hear his voice, you'll know who it is.
Yeah, that's me. I haven't missed a game yet. I will next year, but not so far so good
Well,
from 2009 to tonight.
that's
I just
fantastic. And Paul, thank you so much for being on. This is very interesting. And think about that book, because I'd be the first one to buy one.
I'm
Oh, well,
second.
thank you. That's a great
I'm
idea.
second.
Okay.
I tell you
I'll
what,
put a
All right.
third on it.
I
I'll bet third.
enjoy just listening to you speak. That's it's enough for me, because you have one of those voices that you can listen to forever. And
I've known
well, thank you.
Jimmy 30 plus years. He's never said that to me ever.
Well,
that is true,
well, there's the
because I
making up
didn't get to
do
hear
here.
that. I didn't get to hear the radio voice all the time. It was always your regular voice. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Paul has that sensation of just being able to, when he speaks, it's just,
Oh yeah.
it just, it's just golden. So,
Yeah.
Well, I
thank
always
you,
tried
thank
not
you
to,
for
to
that.
have, some announcers have very distinctive radio voices and off the radio voice. And I
Right.
always tried to have the same voice on or
Which-
off. So that's
Which I
something
can
kinda-
attest to. I can actually attest to that you do, because I have actually known you that long. So,
Oh, good. Good.
I can honestly say that when I hear your voice, whether it's on TV, broadcasting, or just speaking, it's really the same voice, and I think
well,
that's
thanks.
awesome.
Paul, thank
Well,
you for
well,
coming. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
thank you, Jim, and I appreciate everything you've said. And Dale too. And Bob, it's my pleasure being with you.
We used to
Thanks,
say
Paul.
in the radio business, he carries his
Yeah.
balls in a bucket.
Yeah, yeah. FM radio voice, you can't beat it.
Man,
Exactly.
it's time for the Grateful Dead hour, man. You don't have the, like a half stone voice, but for an FM DJ in the 70s.
Good times. Good times.
Or it's time to put on Inagata DeVita so I can go to the bathroom.
Thank you. Stairway to Heaven.
Yes.
Yeah.
One quick story, a KMET story. They interviewed Mary Turner, the burner, one time, and unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago. They asked her about the booth at KMET, and she said something to the effect of, "If they watered it, stuff would grow." You know, I mean, there was always like a pot haze or something in the booth, and
Yeah.
that was FM radio in the 70s. It was.
Yeah, I remember, Mary. I used to because KLAC and KMET were sister stations,
Oh,
and
yeah.
located right around the corner from one another on the third floor of Metro Media Square. And I used to go in and visit with her and sit with her dog. She always had her two German shepherds with her all the time during her air shift, and it was just fun to visit with her and play with the dogs and hang out. So yeah, she's missed.
You know how she got the nickname the Burner? That was from Peter Wolf of the Jay Giles Band. He called her the Burner. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It stuck. So, Paul, again, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Dale.
Well, that's what I mean about he just spouts off where that place was, what the call sign. I can't remember what I'm going to have for lunch, for God's sakes.
I mean, and think of, you would have so many chapters just
Absolutely.
Yeah, those
chapter just on
I
Jimmy.
will give it. I will start thinking more seriously about it now that you kind of
Seriously,
planted that seed.
I had no intention of doing that. A lot of retired umpires had and stuff, but I kind of got tucked in, and I'm glad I did. And for various reasons. But and so many people have said, those are hilarious stories or interesting stories, because kind of behind the curtain kind of thing. But I'm telling you, the experience you've had it would be remarkable to read about it.
I think so too. I think so too.
And I never got into the Mount St. Helens lost uniforms story. So that'll be for the next time.
That's our next podcast.
Bingo.
That's our next podcast.
If you're going to write a book, Dale wants his cut, right, Dale? What's your feedback?
Listen, I'm still trying to get a cut out of the one I did. So
yeah, sometimes that's tough.
Paul, thank you
guys.
so much for joining us.
Paul, see you later.
It was a pleasure.
All
and
right.
we will see you next time. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And that's the show for today, everybody. That was Paul Olden, Jimmy Joyce, Dale Scott. I'm Bob Busser. Remember this, always take the road to the left. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.